Yes, it is. Okay, cool beans. Thank y'all for joining us via Zoom. I know that was very last minute, but appreciate your flexibility. I'm sure this is more convenient for some people also. Want to take the first, I guess it'll be like 12 minutes of class, just debrief again the Piney Woods trip for those who went. And then we can have Catalina join us, have a nice discussion on sort of outreach outside of the storytelling you do. So after you've done the oral histories, how do you continue to engage? How do you take it a step further than telling someone's story to actually developing resources or campaigns or something that could help them outside of the storytelling? And then if we have time, we will be doing interview guide stuff. We will see if we have time. So cool beans. Who show of virtual hands. Who joined us in Piney Woods again? I think it was, yeah, Ariel, Maya, and someone else is joining us. Well, cool. How did that trip go for y'all? How did you feel? This is very much an open share. I know Christina went with us too. Christina, hi. We are debriefing the Piney Woods trip. So anyone is free to unmute themselves. Or I can call on people.
I enjoyed myself. I thought it was a pretty productive trip. It was nice to kind of like put a face on the community, I guess, that we're going to be working with, kind of see what the area is like, assess the vibe a little bit. It was also nice to, speak with some of the Piney Woods community members. I got an impromptu history lesson while I was there by one of the resident historians of the community. It was very in-depth and it was very interesting. And I think it just increased my enthusiasm, I guess, for working with the community going forward. I'm excited to learn some more.
Yay, I'm glad. Anyone else, if people are just echoing Maya's sentiments, I can do a bit of a question actually, because I know quite a few of you seemed nervous or hesitant at first when we first got there to start engaging with people. And I think, that's going to happen when we're sort of cold emailing people, when we're just sort of jumping into communities as non-members of those communities, and wondering how some of y'all ultimately overcame some of those nerves to get to what seemed hopefully like a rewarding experience, just chatting with people. Anyone have any thoughts on that one?
I can share.
Yes, please do, Meg.
At first, yeah, I honestly felt like a little bit awkward because it seemed the community was so tight knit and everyone was also like related in some way. And it felt a little bit awkward just jumping into their conversations, especially when they were talking about people they knew, and members of the community that they shared in common. But I kind of just like after a little while of being there, like the energy was just so like familiar, like everyone just seemed really close, and that kind of was contagious in a way. So I felt more relaxed after a little bit of being there. So I just kind of took an opportunity to talk to two people that I didn't really know and introduce myself. And then I just got more comfortable as time went on.
That's awesome. That's great. I think we were very fortunate to be working with a community that is not only very enthusiastic about their history and knowledgeable about their history, but excited to share it with people who are not in the community. So that's not always going to be the case, I suppose, is the caveat there. And so perhaps it might be worth having some additional conversations in the spring semester around how to overcome some of those nerve barriers, or perhaps those like social barriers that might exist when entering a community that is not your own. I'm glad that y'all eventually sort of picked up on the contagious happiness of the occasion enough to jump into conversation. Anyone else have any thoughts? To the people who just joined us, who were in Piney Woods with us, we're reflecting on our trip, how it went, how it felt, how people might have overcome nerves in engaging with the community, stuff like that. So anyone else want to jump in?
I can. I'll say that I was definitely really nervous in the beginning just because it kind of felt like, yeah, it felt like I was intruding on a family event. Which I guess like it kind of went away a little bit over time, but I would say it differed person to person, depending on who I was speaking to. Like some people seemed like they knew what was happening and automatically were like interested in talking, and not even about like anything in their community. Like they were just asking me questions about myself. Like William Barber's mother, she was super sweet and I loved talking with her. But you could definitely tell that other people were trying to force themselves to like share more about themselves because they were encouraged to. And I didn't really know how to make them feel like you don't have to tell me anything. Like I just kind of felt like some people were maybe forcing themselves to go outside their comfort zone. And I didn't know how to like make them feel more comfortable because I also wasn't super comfortable. And I didn't know how to make them feel at ease in their own space, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. If others felt sort of similar vibes, I know, for example, there was one person, two people. I know some people spoke to Job and Angela. There was an older gentleman who did not want to share his oral history. I know he was talking casually with some people, but he did not want to go on camera. I don't know how engaged he was with y'all outside of that stuff. And that's a really good point, that some people in sort of this setting where William Barber III is saying, we have students here who would like to speak with you, might have felt a bit more uncomfortable and trying to hide, and we're trying to hide that. And my little tidbit, I don't know if Betsy, Erica, or others have a perspective on this as well, would be, honestly, if you can tell people are uncomfortable and they're really going out of their comfort zone, like sometimes people need that push, and sometimes it leads to very fruitful conversations. Other times, if it's really hitting that this person probably doesn't want to talk to me, it's okay to remove yourself. That's my personal perspective. If there were individuals that were just inherently more comfortable talking to their relatives, and it felt very much like you were intruding upon that, and there wasn't that same like welcomeness as some of the others who were enthusiastic to share their stories, I think it's perfectly appropriate to find like a reason to shift to another person who might be a bit more open. We're not there to force ourselves on people or force people to share their stories, no matter how exciting or interesting their story might be. So that's not the most, like, how exactly do you remove yourself? How exactly do you handle that situation in specifics? I think it'll depend on what the vibe is. If it's more appropriate to like politely excuse yourself or be like, it was lovely to meet you, and leave, or to just like exit. But that would be the sort of reaction there. And anyone else have any thoughts on sort of those situations? We're really not trying to push ourselves on people here. And so if you are picking up that somebody is forcing themselves to talk to you, there is absolutely no pressure to make them do that.
Hi, Cameron. I think I can jump in because when Ariel were talking about how some people may not feel comfortable, I was exactly thinking about Angela and Joe as well. But can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. And I personally, so I began to talk to the first person in the community, who was Mr. Shelton, and I began to talk to him because I saw him flying his drone alone at the other side of the house. So I just went into him and I asked what kind of footage that he's trying to shoot and stuff. And so we just began conversation. It was not necessarily about environmental injustice and stuff, but I do feel that that was a good way for me to talk to him, because that's like, because he was, both of us were like comfortable and natural about the fact that we're having a conversation. And after we talked about some random stuff, I began to ask about, for instance, the history of the of those architectures around, and he began to talk about his childhood, and that's how the topics are gradually shifting into the community's history and environmental injustice in parts. So I feel like maybe that is better in terms of approaching people who don't really know you, is that you can start with talking about something else that could make them feel more comfortable. But I do overcame some questions in a way that when I was talking to Angela and I mentioned about the word environmental injustice, she was not familiar with the word at all. And I found myself kind of having trouble to explain what I mean when I'm talking about this. So I think this is definitely something that I have to improve in the future. Yeah. But I was then also talking to another person. He was the one that was doing the DJing and stuff. We were having conversations about the community's history, but then because he didn't know a lot about environmental injustice, or maybe that's because I was not good at asking questions, and so he didn't get what I'm trying to ask. But he did mention a lot about how he sees his own communities and like how people are bending towards each other. And he also told me that he feel like his ancestors will be proud to see like us outsiders, college students and stuff coming to their communities and trying to know about their stories. So he's very welcoming. Yeah, it's just some other random stuffs. But I in general feel like I definitely need to improve myself in terms of how to explain what I want to ask to people, like how to better address the topic of environmental injustice in a way that everyone could be able to understand. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for all those reflections, Angela. I know you were out. I saw you out there. You were the first one talking to people. So that was really exciting. Good for you on that. I think you did mention during the event also that sort of the language and the ways in which we're talking about our issues. Although the environmental justice movement has been around for quite a minute, the term and some of the terminology we would likely use in not only an academic setting, but an organizing setting are not what people are using on the ground to describe their issues. And I think that's a really good lesson in the interview guides. And as y'all are like reviewing each other's materials, we're hoping you can do that either end of this class as well as next class, to start engaging in how you're asking these questions, how you're interacting with communities, understanding that perhaps the question should be a bit more general, just asking people about their experiences. More than likely, people are going to start talking about environmental injustices that they're dealing with without actually calling it environmental justice. And I think that's something we have to be cognizant of when going into communities like this. And also really appreciate the advice that you're sharing about how to engage with people sort of cold turkey when you're not familiar with the community. Just small talk, just start doing that. The sort of the labor of getting to know the person and introducing yourself in small ways. I think I also advised a couple of you during, just like go and sit and listen to people as they're talking. That's the best way to perhaps interject yourself into a conversation sometime, is just to sit down and seem engaged, and eventually they'll turn to you and they might ask you a question, or there might be an opportunity to jump in with a perspective of your own. But just as Angela said, initiating that small talk, engaging yourself in a very simple way with people is usually the best way to bridge that sort of gap that might exist. And if others are also having trouble on sort of how to develop questions and how to describe the issues we're hoping to get into, that's most definitely something we can get into as we're reviewing interview guides. I see that Catalina is joining us, so we're going to shift over to our guest speaker today. But I want to circle back perhaps at the end of class to just make sure y'all felt good about the experience. I know several of y'all said that it was great. It was a great intro to the community. You're excited to continue forward. And just want to make sure that we're preparing you the best we can to begin doing those oral histories. So thank you guys. Any quick questions, any last quick questions while Catalina joins us about Piney Woods, about the work? Yeah, I appreciate y'all sharing. Awesome. Hi, Catalina.
Hi, good morning or afternoon for you all.
Yes, you are joining us from the West Coast right now. Let me pin your screen. I'm sorry we are all off camera. It's we usually we meet in person and we switch to virtual, and it's just been a weird sort of day with tornado warnings and such. So I'm gonna pin your screen, but I want to briefly introduce you to our class, the EJ Oral History class. If the students wouldn't mind, we don't need to go through all of the intros. We can just like your name and your year sort of thing. We don't need to get into why you're in the project and stuff, so we can get started on the presentation. So should I call on people, or I'm gonna call on you guys to make this move? Maya, you're the first one on my screen.
Sure. Hi, my name is Maya. I'm a second-year master's student in the Global Health program.
Awesome. Next we have Betsy.
Hi, welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Betsy Albright, faculty at the Nicholas School.
Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm a senior undergrad studying environmental science.
Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm also a senior studying social movements and social justice.
Hattie.
Hi, I'm Hattie, and I'm a junior studying public policy and psychology.
Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm a sophomore studying history.
Ariel.
Hi, I'm Ariel. I'm a junior studying environmental science.
Tasha.
Hey there, I'm Tasha. I use they, them pronouns, and I am studying African American history as an undergrad. I am a third year.
Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Weinthal. I'm also faculty in the Nicholas School of the Environment. It's nice to meet you.
Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm a senior majoring public policy.
Amina.
Hi there, I'm Amina. I'm a senior at UNC studying public policy, environmental justice, and data science.
Ryan.
Hello, I'm Ryan. I'm a master's student studying environmental health.
Madeline.
Hi, I'm Madeline. I'm a sophomore undergrad studying poli-sci.
And Amanda.
Hi, I'm a second year master's student studying public policy with a concentration in social policy.
Awesome. We have a really big group. You saw a mix of grad students and undergrads here, and the common denominator is the environmental justice oral history project we're doing. So we're really looking forward to speaking to you about the storytelling work you've been able to engage in and sort of help prepare our students to take their oral history and storytelling work to the next level. And I know we met briefly after you joined us at Duke earlier this year, but can everyone see the pinned? Okay, awesome. So I can briefly introduce you, Catalina, if that makes sense. Do you have share screen access?
Actually, I was gonna say my laptop is acting up this morning. So if you wouldn't mind sharing the slides, I would really appreciate that.
Oh, yes, I can. I should have let you, I just dove right in. I apologize. Let me pull those up really quickly. And perhaps if you want to introduce yourself while I find that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Catalina Garzon. I am on the health education and communications team at Tracking California, which is a program of the Public Health Institute based in Oakland, or traditional Huichin Ohlone territory here in California. And we basically compile environmental and health data throughout the state and make it publicly available on our portal. And we also partner with community-based organizations and coalitions on environmental health and justice research projects, and do a lot of data analysis and health education work as well with community partners. So today, my background is more around community-based participatory research. But in my role as tracking, I've been doing more and more participatory media and communications product development with community partners. And so the digital storytelling work that I'll be sharing with you today is a part of that. And I'll be sharing examples from a few different digital storytelling projects we did in partnership with Story Center, which is a participatory media organization, Berkeley, and their digital storytelling approach. And so they've generously agreed to have me share some of that framework with you in this presentation. And I've been blessed to be able to participate in their online digital storytelling certification program, and served as a co-facilitator of several of the storytelling workshops that I'll be talking about today.
Can everybody see that?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. So I think we can click to the next slide. And since you all already introduced yourselves, thank you for doing that. I guess a question I have for you, since you already shared a little bit about your name and academic background interests, maybe if you wouldn't mind typing in the chat where you're joining from, and a question you have about digital storytelling and or how it can be used as a tool for environmental health and justice. And I was just curious how many of you have heard the term digital storytelling before? And if anyone would want to chime in with what that means to you, digital storytelling. Does anybody want to chime in?
I saw Amina raise her hand, putting you on the spot, Amina.
Oh no, I got voluntold. Okay. Digital storytelling is just a matter of compiling or using data that's been compiled to effectively tell a story in a way that's publicly available and accessible by the entire community. So it's not just siloed off into different research disciplines. It's something that's available on a common platform.
Thank you so much. Amina, is that your name?
Yes, that's my name.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely, that is definitely an element of the work that we're doing and the approach to digital storytelling that I'll be sharing about. Next slide. So today I'm hoping to share more about how at least the organizations we've been working with are using digital storytelling as a tool for environmental health and justice, and then what we as facilitators or support, technical support or facilitation support for these digital storytelling processes consider in creating a safe space for sharing lived experiences with environmental racism and injustice. And a lot of times we're asking people to relive or revisit experiences that can be painful, traumatic, can be connected to personal illness or illness in family members and community members. And so with you sort of some of the practices and things that we have incorporated into the digital storytelling process to account for that and ensure that people are caring for themselves as well as holding space for caring for the mental health and emotional well-being of the participants. And then, as I mentioned, I'll be sharing examples of a few different digital storytelling projects, especially with a focus on how we've shared the stories with a range of audiences and how the stories have been integrated into broader environmental health and justice campaigns by our community partners. Next slide. So the approach that we've been using is one, as I mentioned, that has been developed by Story Center. And their approach to digital storytelling is very much a participatory approach to making media, resulting in short videos, like 2 to 3 minute videos based on the storyteller's lived experiences. Digital storytelling is also just the process, the facilitated group process we use to create the videos based on images and first person narratives. So these images are curated, selected by the storyteller as well. And then the narratives are written and recorded with the storyteller. And then digital storytelling is also a very creative experience that centers the storyteller's ownership and agency in telling and sharing their lived experiences with others, which is why we sort of emphasize, talking with them about how the stories will be used up front and how we will be distributing the stories and involving them in those decisions as well. Next slide. Digital storytelling and environmental justice. And I know this is probably something you all have thought a lot about in the context of oral histories and their relationship to environmental justice. So here I just principles of environmental justice that I felt shared, kind of resonated with the approach that we use for digital storytelling with partners and in the projects I'll be talking about. But I was just curious how you have, if you have thoughts about how the process of telling your story, whether that's from, through an oral history or through a digital stories project or another medium, like how does that, to you, how does that intersect with environmental justice? Does anyone want to share a reflection around that?
Feel free to unmute. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I guess like a lot of environmental injustice stems from there being certain voices that like people in power are less likely to listen to. And so they feel like they can just like stick all their problems in one place without thinking about the people there. And so I guess like the importance of letting people tell their own story and like have their own voice when people have tried to deny that to them.
Thank you. Yeah, and what's your name? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Madeline.
Madeline, yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important.
Did she freeze for anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just typing in the chat.
Historical oppression. So thank you for raising that. Are there other reflections about how the process of telling your own story kind of intersects with environmental justice that anyone wants to share?
I think the two intersect because, to my understanding, one component of environmental injustice is kind of like the silencing of people who are impacted or the diminishing of their stories. And so through storytelling, you can kind of, like, it's restorative in the way that it amplifies their voices so they can tell what happened to them in the way that they experienced it.
Yes, thank you so much. And I love how you use the term restorative, because I do think of it as a restorative process, justice. That is the circle process that's used even in digital storytelling, very analogous, I think, to a lot of the circle processes that are used in restorative justice circles. And it's, thinking about how we can it's not just like a cathartic process, but how telling and then sharing this story can also contribute to advancing justice for a particular community. And that's where, storytelling in the context of an environmental health and justice campaign can be really powerful. And then also just affirms the kind of culturally rooted aspects of storytelling just generally, right? How this is an important tradition in many communities, and that oral traditions have sort of gotten historically marginalized in many ways because of the predominant kind of ways of documenting experiences and forms or through research. And so just affirming and creating space for storytelling can be really powerful to affirm our relationships to land, place, and to each other. And so it can be a great tool for cross-cultural learning, popular education, and power building, and then also strengthening relationships among the storytellers themselves and across communities if they're representing different communities. So it can be a good movement building, field and movement building tool as well. Next slide.
And Catalina, just to let you know, I think your internet might be a little unstable. We're hearing most of you, but sometimes you freeze, just to let you know.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, I'll also try, try logging in on my laptop again at some. Unfortunately, it's been freezing up, so I haven't been able to. So I'll try that too, and to see if that helps. But yeah, please feel free to stop me at any time if like I cut out and you're not hearing what I'm saying. Here are just sort of the 7 steps process that Story Center uses in their digital storytelling workshops. So as I mentioned, one of the first ones, once folks introduce themselves and then also share, Story Center shares a little bit about their approach to digital storytelling. The storytellers then participate in a story circle to develop their story. So everyone goes around and shares a lived experience that they've had or that their family or something in their family or community history that they really want to share as part of their story. And then there's an opportunity for people to provide them with reflections on that, on what they've shared. And then the storyteller will develop a written script for their video, and these are very succinct, so that maybe 100 to 300 words. So sometimes it takes a few different iterations of writing the script or editing it to get it to that length. And then the storyteller will audio record their voiceover based on their script, and a lot of times in those technical pieces of creating the audio recording or the video, stories or other facilitators will provide support with that, some of the technical support with that. And then the storytellers will select images to accompany their story. A lot of times they're, family photographs they have, but they may also go out and take photos or record short topic of their story, or do some archival research and look for other images and different photo libraries online or at their library locally. And then the video editing piece is usually, in the workshops we've done, it's usually something that Story Center has done behind the scenes, but I've also participated in workshops with them where they teach storytellers how to use a platform called WeVideo. It's an online app that you can sign up for a free trial to use, and you can essentially upload audio files, picture files, video files, and then compile them all into a video using that platform. And then typically there'll be some additional video editing and post-production. Story Center usually provides that support, since many of the storytellers, this is usually one of their first times developing a video. So they usually have some of that support just to ease transitions and make sure sound quality is working well throughout the video and all of that kind of stuff. In addition to adding credits at the end, and subtitles sometimes when needed to the stories. And then typically there will be a final screening of all the stories where a participant share the videos with each other, and folks provide them sort of feedback or reflections on what really resonated with them based on that experience. So the workshops we've done have been around 6 to 8 participants, but they can be smaller or larger depending on how many facilitators are involved and the needs and of the storyteller, and then the format. So if the goal is to build skills around video editing production, then the workshop will spend more of those components. But sometimes if it's really emotionally sensitive subject matter, then the emphasis will be on creating self-care and grounding activities throughout the workshop, and a lot of the technical aspects of video editing production will be done behind the scenes in between sessions. Next slide. So the first example I wanted to share with you all of a digital storytelling project we've done was one we did during the first year of the pandemic, fall 2020, with members of the Allies in Reducing Emissions, or IDA Collaborative, which is a network of 6 environmental justice organizations here in California that are in communities that are overburdened by air pollution and are actively working to ensure that emissions planning in those communities advances community priorities. And so that storytelling workshop was a collaboration between the IDA Collaborative members, Tracking California, which is the program I'm with, and Story Center. And the goal of the workshop was really to develop stories based on participants' experiences with air quality monitoring and advocating for better air quality in their communities as part of the implementation of a piece of legislation that was passed here in California called AB 617, which sought to really target communities overburdened by pollution for emission reductions, planning, and air quality improvement investments. And so as part of that, they developed a community air grants program that provided direct funding to community-based organizations to do their own community air monitoring projects and build up their own infrastructure to do air monitoring in their communities. So there were 6 participants in total in that workshop, 1 per member organization of the IDA Collaborative. And ultimately, the stories were integrated into IDA members' health education and communications work to share their community air monitoring and emissions reductions work with target audiences, including community members and staff of local air districts and the State Air Resources Board as part of their advocacy work around emissions reduction planning in their communities. So initially we had talked to IDA members about developing case studies on their work, and the feedback we got is we don't think anyone's going to read a written case study. It seemed like very researchy to them, and so that's where how we landed on doing digital stories instead. And because of the pandemic restrictions, we ended up doing this workshop all virtual instead of in person, and sort of learning as we went in terms of providing all the support to storytellers around actually, you know, like recording their audio and curating their images, and then editing the videos. Next slide. So the process we used was very similar to what I just outlined around, you know, generally Story Center's approach. But because of the pandemic, one of the emphases I really wanted in the workshop was on team building activities, because we couldn't gather in person as a coalition at that time. And so they really wanted to get to know each other more, like on a more personal level, like what motivated them to do this work to begin with? Like, why did they think it was so important? And so we had a lot of those kinds of activities throughout the workshop. So we actually ended up not emphasizing as much the skills building component around the technical aspects of video editing and production. Because of that, we did that more in between sessions. And then we did, after the workshop ended, we also worked with IDEM members to plan a virtual community screening via Zoom with community members and agency staff in December 2020, where they shared their stories. Each storyteller introduced their own video, and then we also had an opportunity for participants in the screening to ask questions of the storytellers about their videos and about how they were hoping to use them to support the work they were doing to improve air quality in their communities. Next slide. So I was hoping to share a few examples of digital stories with you, but I wanted to also just check in to see how much time we had, Cameron, to see if that would be possible.
Yes. How long is it?
This is just, it's like a 3-minute.
That's totally
video.
fine. We have plenty of time. That is
great. Thank you. So hopefully it'll work if you, yeah, there you go. Yeah, the link is embedded there. So this is by Ruben Rodriguez, who is an organizer.
Oops, sorry.
So he's a community organizer with Central California Environmental Justice Network, and chose to tell the video, tell the story in this video about his journey from being an oil and gas worker in the Central Valley of California to becoming a community organizer and working on air quality issues. So yeah, please go ahead and share. Thanks.
I knew what I was getting myself into.
Can everyone hear that? Let me just check. Can everyone hear this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
In fact, in school and in town, there was always a huge hype about oil field workers and the perks that came along with that job. We received a call one day to attend an oil leak. It was a location we'd already been to in the past. We began with heavy equipment and soon realized we needed to get in there with shovels because of the tanglement of so many old and worn out pipes. After carefully excavating 3 more feet, we came across the leak. One pipe was so damaged, we had to add an extra piece of gasket to the clamp. I hopped out of the hole, drenched in oil, and looked around me. Behind me, the backhoe was already at work, covering up the mess. On the side was the San Joaquin Valley, and on the other side, the Pleasant Valley, where I reside. I knew one day all this contamination would eventually end up in our communities. Cancer, asthma, diabetes, droughts, fires, uprisings, contamination of the water, the land, and our food are all results of this intertwined madness. As a society, we are lost in the world of consumerism, wanting more without understanding the consequences that this brings. My daughter is only 5 years old, and even though she does not understand everything she is witnessing, these are all events that will impact her future and the future of others. We are facing troubling times. Lifestyles and ignorance are damaging everything around us. Now I find myself an air quality monitor technician, helping collect data that will give us an idea of what the local air quality is like. My work requires coming together with local residents and the rolling out of a community air monitoring network. It will be used to inform residents of Kings County and the west side of Fresno County about local air quality. At times, it feels like we're past the point of no return, but seeing things we are getting done in my neck of the woods gives me much needed hope. When will we realize that we all have responsibilities?
Oh, I see Tasha raise their hand. Will I get back to this? Go ahead, Tasha.
Hey, yeah, I just thank you for sharing that with us, Catalina. That was very beautiful. I have a question. So in our class, we're collecting oral histories, right? So we're not able to, we don't, after an interview process, like create a script. And I'm curious how you feel the script writing process benefits and hinders the stories that are told by the folks y'all are working with, the storytellers.
Thank you, Tasha. Yeah, that is a really important question, I think. I mean, there is definitely a lot of wordsmithing that can happen during the script writing process. So sometimes it can detract from some of the just like raw emotion that comes out and when people are initially revisiting an experience or memory that they want to share. Sometimes there is kind of an urge to have this like neat story arc with some kind of a like message at the end or resolution, you know, like the typical arc of a story. And sometimes that's not really aligned with somebody's experience. Like they may not know what they may still be working through what this means to them, this experience they had, and or what they, you know, why they feel compelled to share it. And so sometimes that can be a little, you know, that can feel a little like there's some pressure to maybe do that. But we do, I mean, and you know, the skilled facilitators we work with at Story Center, I think they're really good at trying to temper those things and really get, you know, making sure people feel really connected to what the essence of what they want to share is, so that they don't lose that, you know, in the process of writing. And then also there's some folks feel a lot like less comfortable with writing than with just sharing verbally because of limited formal education or other reasons. Like, and so like the next project I'll be sharing about, which was with farm worker leaders. Many of them have limited literacy, language literacy in any language. And many of them are indigenous speaking farm workers. And so their languages are oral tradition languages that do not have a written form. And so we had to adapt the script writing piece for that, because there was no way of writing out a script in Mixteco, for example. And so I think that's where, you know, having Story Center as a partner and having them have such rich and varied like experiences working with groups around the world on storytelling projects really helped, because they were able to figure out, okay, how can we adapt this? And so basically it was having folks share their story and then creating sort of like an annotated version for the purposes of supporting the video production process, but ultimately it was just, having them shared verbally, especially for the folks who wanted to record their stories in Mixteco. But I'll share a little more about that project next. But thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you for your answer.
And so, yeah, I think just to kind of wrap up sort of the sharing around the IDA Stories project. There are many ways we shared out the stories. Initially, it was they were uploaded onto Story Center's YouTube channel, and then IDA members shared them via social media. They shared them via their other communication channels with their organizations, to their members and staff. And then I mentioned the community screening we had. Where over 30 community members, agency staff, and other folks participated. We also worked with IDA members to create a story map using ArcGIS software to share the embedded videos as well as biographies of the storytellers on the IDA Collaborative's website. So this was part of like distributing the case studies, but in the form of stories. That IDA members wanted to share about why they feel that this work is so important, their community air monitoring and air quality planning work. And then we also found, looked into some other distribution channels. So we have submitted a video compilation of the IDA stories to the 2020 APHA Film Festival. It was screened there virtually and then presented on the project at the 2021 International Society for Exposure Science, or ICES, which was also held virtually. And then we've also developed a manuscript, though it's not published yet, co-authored by IDA members on the project, which included the results of group interviews with the storytellers that were done after the project, sort of with reflections about how they use the stories, some of the challenges in doing that, especially during the pandemic and that kind of thing. So those are some of the ways that those stories have been shared up to now. And again, because of the restrictions of the pandemic on in-person gatherings and in-person community outreach and organizing work, it sort of impacted how they were able to share the videos with some of the target audiences. So a lot of it was done through internet or social media kind of based platforms. Next slide. So the other project, another project I wanted to mention was the digital stories we did in summer 2021 with farm worker leaders in the Achieving Resilient Communities, or ARC project in Ventura County. Our partners there were MICOP, which is Mixteco Indígena Community Organizing Project, and Líderes Campesinas, and then Story Center and the California Department of Public Health were also involved in that project along with us. CDPH provided some financial support for Story Center to be involved in this workshop. And the way we landed at doing a digital stories project with the farm worker leaders was that they really felt like there was a need to create more materials in Spanish and indigenous languages for farm workers around worker protections during heat waves and wildfires, what workers could do to protect their health, what their rights were, and to also account for the fact that many farm workers have limited language literacy, and so written materials aren't going to reach them. And as I mentioned, indigenous language speaking farm workers, their languages are more traditional languages often, so there is no written form for those languages. that's a standardized way of transliterating them. So what we decided to do then was create digital stories as sample educational materials that MyCop and Líderes organizers and farmer leaders could use to share their experiences with wildfire smoke and extreme heat, as well as how to protect their health during those events with other farm workers. And so both MyCop and Líderes have a very participatory, like leadership development approach with their leaders. And so they decided that the participants in the workshop should be selected by raffle. So raffled off among this group of 30 farm worker leaders that we worked with to plan and carry out a series of workshops that summer on the health impacts of extreme heat and wildfire smoke. And so in total, there were 7 participants in the digital storytelling workshop, 4 from MyCop and 3 from Líderes Campesinas. And then the digital stories that were created in the workshop were integrated into a broader informational campaign led by MyCop and Líderes farm worker leaders to educate others in their communities about how to protect their health during heat events and wildfire events. Next slide. So the workshop we did with the farm worker leaders, because we felt like, you know, folks were going to be bringing up experiences that were potentially traumatic, like experiencing heat-related illness in the fields, at work, or evacuating during a wildfire, you know, things that are very emotionally charged. We wanted to emphasize building in a lot of time into the workshop for grounding activities and just checking in with folks about how they were feeling. And so one of the facilitators for this workshop was a licensed clinical psychologist and counselor. So she helped to facilitate those activities in the session, in the different sessions. And so because of that, we also kind of de-emphasize the skills building component around video editing and production for this particular workshop, so that we really could center mental health and emotional wellness during the workshop with the farm worker leaders. So as I mentioned, a lot of them chose to record their stories in both Spanish and Mixteco, an indigenous language from southern Mexico that many of them, the leaders involved in this project speak. And then we also organized a virtual community screening with the cohort, the larger cohort of 30 farm worker leaders, where the storytellers introduced their videos and then had a dialogue with other farm worker leaders about what they shared in the videos, and then how they wanted to use the stories to support the informational campaign that they were involved in, or with other farm workers around extreme heat and wildfire smoke. And this was all, again, done virtually because of the pandemic. So we did the entire workshop on Zoom, and also the virtual community screening as well. And some of the farm workers joined from the fields. Like, it was really amazing to see that they would, you know, they would basically be in their work clothes, like they would be on their smart, you know, in their car, or, you know, in a rest area or something. And so yeah, it's really powerful to see that their commitment and dedication to being involved in this, even after, you know, such a long work day. Next slide. I wanted to share, if there's time, just an example of one of the stories that this is by Amy Gomez with Líderes Campesinas. She's sharing an experience with the Thomas Fire, which was one of the biggest wildfires in California state history. that occurred in 2017, 2018 in Ventura County.
So I think we can go until 3:15. Is there enough time to finish the, or I guess it would
Yeah,
be
this
for you?
yeah, this is like a 3-minute video as well. So
Yeah, no worries. I
yeah,
just want to make
thank
sure that
you.
we can get through the whole.
Hola, soy Amy Gómez. Soy originaria del estado de Durango. Vivo en Santa Paula, California, condado de Ventura, donde había incendio. No dormía de estar pensando que íbamos a quemar. A las 12 de la noche nosotros estábamos echando agua arriba de la casa para que no llegara la lumbre. A mí se me metieron las cenizas adentro del cuerpo y me impactó los pulmones. Empecé con tos muy fuerte y llegó a punto que me dio asma. A pesar de los medicamentos, se me hincharon bastante los pulmones. El momento en que la ambulancia vino y me recogió afuera de la casa, sentí que ya me estaba asfixiando. Me dio una desesperación de no poder respirar. La ambulancia me levantó, donde me había desvanecido. Después me pegó pulmonía. Me afectó bastante fuerte porque aparte tengo 2 niños. Me ponía a llorar. Es que mis hijos me necesitaban de verdad. Así pues, con los días salí del hospital. A la semana tuve que llevar a mis 2 hijos al hospital porque resultaron con las mismas consecuencias que yo. El humo les había dado asma. Las cenizas se les había metido dentro de los pulmones. Tosían y vomitaban puras cenizas. Tengo muchas emociones. He llorado. Es que en algún momento va a parar esto. Como ser humano, uno no está preparado. No te dan educación sobre cómo lidiar con estas catástrofes. Fueron cosas bien fuertes para mí. Necesitamos más apoyo. Tiene que haber una solución para el cambio climático. Y la verdad, cuando yo estaba en el hospital, sentía que me iba a morir. Pensé en mis hijos, ¿qué van a hacer si no hay nadie con ellos? Es dura mi historia.
Profundo agradecimiento a los participantes del taller y su contribución a nuestra comprensión de los efectos de cambios climáticos sobre la salud en California. Gracias por la cooperación de las siguientes organizaciones y programas: Líderes Campesinas, Proyecto Indígena Mixteca, Alianza de Resiliencia Comunitaria, Causa. Gracias a los siguientes programas del Instituto de Salud Pública, apoyo financiero.
Just to clarify, do we have till 15 after for including with questions?
That would be great if there's an opportunity so our students have the last 15 minutes of class to debrief. Yes. So for both questions.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then, so should I, so the next 15, I mean, until the 15 after, that's, that includes the time to debrief and questions?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, I just wanted to share that how we distributed this farm worker stories with the leaders that were storytellers and also my cup and líderes. So we did provide them on YouTube and share them via social media. We did a whole series of posts for Farm Worker Awareness Week, where we shared out the stories. We also planned a community screening, as I mentioned, virtually with farm worker leaders. And then we presented with some of the storytellers involved in the project at the MIT Policy Hackathon and the California Climate Action Team's Public Health Work Group meeting. So together there were like several hundred participants at these forums where they had an opportunity to share their stories as part of these presentations. And then we've also been working with Micah and Lideres on a campaign that they're leading to integrate audio based multilingual messaging into the emergency alert system for wildlife smoke. Wildfire smoke in Ventura County. In Spanish, Mixteco, Zapoteco, and other indigenous languages. And so we've shared the stories as examples of types of materials that agencies like the Air Pollution Control District could be creating to do outreach on their system to farm workers. So I know we don't have a lot of time left, and I had some additional slides about ethical considerations, but I think that they're pretty text heavy, so I think you could probably read through them. And if you have questions about that, I'm happy to stay in touch after to talk more about that with you. But I did just want to see, I mean, there's also some information about another project I was involved in with Story Center here, but it wasn't a partnership with a specific community-based organization. So just wanted to see what questions you had about anything I shared, or just your thoughts about how this could inform your work in your oral histories projects. Any reflections even on the stories too that came up for you as you were watching them?
Hi, Catalina. I can just chime in here. There are a few other questions in the chat which might be helpful to kind of kickstart the conversation too, but I guess I can begin with mine. So I'm interested in working with farmers and farm workers in North Carolina, specifically Black and Hispanic and Indigenous farmers and farm workers. And so I was wondering, in getting these folks to be involved in the project, was there any sort of incentive that was involved for participation? And it was just profound to me that they would be able to join from the fields. And yeah, just wondering how that worked also with consideration to, if there are any inherent dangers in participating in a project like this one while they're on the job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so to clarify, they didn't join while they were at work, but some of them joined like right after they finished their shift or something. So they were still in their work clothes or like they still hadn't like gotten home or to another place. So they weren't in the workshop or shifts at work. And so we did, when we were scheduling the sessions, we tried to accommodate their schedules as much as possible. So the sessions were in the evenings, like from 6 to 8 p.m., typically a time after their shift. CDPH, which funded the workshop and Story Center's involvement in planning and facilitating the workshop, as well as the support to finish the videos. They also provided some funding for reimbursement for like childcare expenses or transportation expenses or other expenses associated with participating in the workshop. They also had some funding for participant stipends for the farm worker leaders to compensate their time participating in the workshop, especially if they had to take time off from work to do that. So that funding was available and provided to the leaders who were involved in the workshop.
Awesome, thank you so much.
And I'm just seeing some common questions in the chat from Amanda and Maya. They all sort of revolve around like choosing your audiences? How are you making sure that the storytelling is getting to the people you want it to get to? And from an environmental justice standpoint, maybe specific audiences like policymakers or business owners or like people who are not already interested in the topic.
Yeah, I think we have tried to do some things to reach broader audiences, like with some of the presentations we've done, or like the story map that we did with the videos and biographies of storytellers. And we have shared some of these stories with agency staff and like for other stakeholders involved in emissions reduction planning, which sometimes include industry representatives that are kind of coming at the whole issue from a whole different perspective and with a whole different kind of set of interests than the organizers and advocates that we've been partnering with. But I think we primarily, like our primary audiences were more, community members, farm workers, directly impacted residents and agency staff of air quality agencies, right? And public health departments and folks who are working to provide services to or resources like this emergency alert system on wildfire smoke to directly impacted residents. So we didn't focus a lot of our energy on like reaching a broader public or reaching stakeholders that might not have similar goals or perspectives, if that. But I think it does. I mean, I think the stories are very powerful in reaching folks, kind of in a heart space that may just be connecting to these issues from a different place, like more, from the perspective of their job or their agency that they're representing. And I think these really humanize a lot of the issues that are coming up for, in policy arenas or other spaces.
Awesome. Anyone else have any last questions for Catalina? And we'll share your slides. I am so sorry we weren't able to get through all of your slides, but it's extremely helpful. And we'll be sure to share the remaining slides as well as your contact information with everyone if people can follow up with you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anyone about your projects or about the projects we've worked on, and answer any other questions folks have.
Awesome, my guys. Well, Catalina, we so appreciate your time, appreciate your flexibility with us. I know this was sort of a shifting date sort of thing and figuring out the tech sort of thing. So really appreciate you joining us and sharing your work.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciated hearing about your work, and hopefully we'll stay in touch. And I would love to see what you all develop, through your partnerships in this class and oral histories with community members and organizations.
We're most definitely going to stay in touch. We were supposed to connect around expanding of some of these storytelling opportunities. So I'm going to be following up with you. I encourage the students to do the same.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you too. Bye.
Awesome, guys. So we're not going to have time to do interview guides today. I'm not sure if all of you submitted yours anyway, so they're due today, this afternoon at midnight. Just make sure you try to get those in. Any thoughts, any quick debriefs after Catalina's presentation? Did we lose a few people? Huh, that's too bad. I think I want to provide some context for y'all also on this sort of outreach piece, because y'all have an outreach strategy due at the end of the semester. What Catalina sort of outlined, in the development of this storytelling is ways to engage communities on multiple levels in this sort of work. And I think we're hopeful that as you guys are doing your own oral histories, whether it's with the partners that we are connecting you with or the people you're reaching out on your own, is sort of determining what the community wants and how far they want to go in terms of the publicization of their oral histories and additional stories. The purpose of this project is to can sort of make space for those whose voices have historically been left out of the media and out of these conversations. And if there are opportunities to do that outside of collecting their oral history, perhaps it's writing an article, perhaps it's, as I know some people have thrown around, developing a curriculum that can be shared out as a template of some sort. There's a lot of opportunities to take this from an interview or a set of interviews and turn it into something that people, wider audiences, politicians, whatever, are engaging with. I know on the Piney Woods front, for example, there was obviously the article that I recently wrote, and I know that we had some students go down and document the Harvest Festival for what hopes to be a mini documentary that can be used for subsequent journalism, or that can be shared out with documentary teams. It's sort of like, how are we taking the stories that we're collecting and the history that we're trying to preserve and taking it a step further to get the word out about these communities. And I'm going to put Amanda on the spot too, because I know we were just talking about the work that oral history she's hoping to collect in Louisiana, and also doing an article about that, some sort of journalistic piece. I know Christina was a part of our journalism project at one point, wanting to do something similar in North Carolina. So there's opportunities to take this step further. Sorry, did somebody jump in? Was that Amanda that jumped in?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just
If you
saying,
wanna-
yeah.
Yeah, if you want to say something about that, I would love for you to.
No, I mean, I just I had trouble kind of figuring out the journalism piece because I didn't have the context and stuff and so I think that starting our oral history might actually inspire some of us to figure out the journalism piece. And Cameron said, luckily, that that is kind of an open door in terms of when we do that. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I would just encourage people to think about how what they're learning through oral history could maybe be applied to the journalism piece. And, I guess we'd have to be careful about sort of crossing lines, and asking too much of people, but just a thought to have it in your mind.
That's exactly right. We're not trying to put too much on communities, but when we do get communities that are so excited and want their story shared out in multiple ways, we are here to help in that. If you're interested in exploring multimedia ways of engaging these topics, we are here to support you on that and create avenues for sharing those out, either through partner outlets or on our website. I also want to highlight, in the springtime, we are developing a final website for this project, something that is public facing, something that could be a story map type something. I think we're hoping to do some ArcGIS related, something where we can pinpoint all of the oral histories that you guys are going to be collecting on a map so people can engage with it very interactively. The opportunities are endless to really develop out a final resource for not only the communities that we are working with, but for the general public. So would love y'all's thoughts as you begin engaging with your communities. Ask them, how can we best do this? Do you want something else written about you? Do you want us to develop a curriculum with you? What would be most beneficial for you? And if it's just oral history, then that's fine. So hopefully y'all got something out of that session with Catalina. I'll share the slides and such afterwards. We're not gonna have time to do interview guides, so I wanna quickly check in on some things with y'all. The first is next week, we don't have anything special planned. It's literally just going to be bring everything that you have done so far and be ready to discuss it in groups. So for example, your interview guide should be done. We will use that time if you want to like review each other's interview guides, maybe go through some of the remaining interview guide activities that we didn't get to with the UNC Southern Oral History Project. I know that your outreach strategies, which is literally this sort of, how do I take it a step further? How do I engage the community further? What ideas or possibilities are there for the community I'm looking at? That's not due until December 9th. But if you start thinking about that stuff and want to list some things and run ideas by each other, that is what next class is for. It's going to be super fun. So literally bring anything you've got, your revised mid-semester outlines, your interview guides, your outreach strategies if you've got it, any idea documents, brainstorming documents, whatever, and come ready to bounce ideas off of each other. That's the purpose of next class. And bounce ideas off of us. We'll be around to provide feedback and additional resources or contacts or whatever you need during next class period. That'll be a fun time. The other thing I want to make sure that I let y'all know is that we kind of messed up the dates, or I messed up the dates on the syllabus for when this class ends. So our last class is actually December 2nd. It is not December 9th. Your final mid-semester outlines and your draft outreach strategies are still due on December 9th, but we will have our last meeting on December 2nd, because apparently that's the last day of graduate classes. I did not know that, and I'm a grad student, so that's messed up. For the undergrads in the room, you just you get out early. And that's now reflected in the syllabus, but I want to make sure everyone's clear on that so you don't show up on December 9th, and I'll remind everyone next time. Am I missing anything? I don't think so. Anyone have any? Yes, Amina.
So just a quick question on, I know you said in the previous email that you were gonna send around why can't I speak? A survey that would ask like what times would be best preferred for next semester. Has that been sent out already, or did I miss that?
No, you didn't miss anything. That was the other thing that I was going to mention and I forgot. Thank you for the reminder. So show of hands, whose schedules are in a good place for us to be sending out a survey? Do y'all have a handle of your availabilities next semester? Okay, yeah, okay.
Not me, Cameron. I'm waiting for the data for impact, which actually might be at this exact time. So, and I'm most likely going to get into it because I'm going to fight them until I do. So, yeah.
We're probably not going to meet at this time. Like this time actually conflicts with a class that I've got. So we're not going to do this anymore. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to send out that survey probably early next, like on Monday, give y'all till the end of the week to fill it out, just giving us your best times. Okay. We're going to try our best to fit everyone in, because we want to be able to have these in-person sessions, but also understanding that next semester is going to look a lot different than this semester did. We're not going to have these sorts of lectures. It's not going to be as structured. We're not going to have these modules on environmental justice and storytelling, all this type of stuff. Like it's literally just going to be us coming together and checking in and using the time for brainstorm. There might be the occasional lecture if something cool happens, somebody cool comes to campus, but like it's going to turn into a traditional Bass Connections project. That's how it's sort of been described, where you guys are leading the discussions. You are updating us on your projects. We're not providing as much structure. So hopefully we can all find a time that works for the majority. If that's not the case, just know that you're not missing out on as much, as long as you're keeping us in the loop on things. Any other?
Yeah, Cameron, so we have the thing today and then nothing due again until the 9th.
Your event reflection is due on Monday. If y'all remember the EJ event reflection from all the EJ events that happened in September, that can be a short. We just wanted to check that you engaged with that material.
Oh, I have it. I just didn't have it labeled Bass, so I didn't know what it was.
Cool beans, it's already done. Just submit that in Sakai. It's due on Monday. And then after that, the rest of your assignments aren't due until December 9th. That's correct.
I have a question, but it's more of like a personal question about Piney Woods. So I recorded like some people answering one question for the little documentary. Who should I send that to?
Send that to me, please.
Okay, cool. I'll do that.
Thank you, Christina. Cool beans, my guys. We have 3 more minutes. I guess I just want to check, lastly, how everyone's feeling. Consider this like sort of very brief, like course check-in. How are people feeling about where we stand, the direction of the course, in terms of like how supported you felt, preparedness for things. Next class is going to be, we're getting into that sort of space where you are going to get a lot less direction from us. And so I want to make sure that you guys have felt supported and prepared up until this point to be able to take over and begin navigating your individual oral histories.
Cameron, I wonder if like, well, I mean, we've seen some examples in the lectures and stuff, but like, do you like, are you gonna do one, or like, I guess, is there a best sample thing that you would recommend us look before we start actually doing ours? And are we just gonna start like doing ours, or I guess I'm kind of not really sure like what happens when we're ready to start? Like, because
yeah,
if we're just recording it, like, do we need any tech people involved? Because it's not on camera, right?
So that's an excellent question. The first bit is in terms of resources, I would recommend you actually look at the Southern Oral History Project to
Right.
some examples. They have served as a very good like benchmark for us in terms of what we're hoping this looks like in the end. So if y'all are looking for examples, I would go to their website and just listen to some of the oral histories there. In terms of just starting, because I know some of you have reached out like, I'm ready to get started as long as I have the information. The timeline we have laid out for your individual oral histories, like the ones that you outlined in your mid-semester outlines, was that you begin that outreach like now, but you don't actually need to conduct the oral history until the springtime. We're heading into a weird point where it'll be kind of awkward, honestly, to just disappear on people when you guys go to winter break. And so if you want to establish that connection, be like, hey, we can reconnect after the holidays. I just wanted to introduce myself, especially if you're cold emailing people. So this is the stage where you're establishing those relationships. You're identifying who you might be able to do an oral history with, connecting with, and then in the springtime is when you might actually collect those oral histories. If you want to start sooner, please make sure that you contact us, because we want to make sure we convey the informed consent process with you appropriately.
Okay, so that was like my main question was, like, what do we need to do with you before we start?
Yes.
So that's good. Okay.
And you know what, I will take some time in advance, or I'll take some time at the front of next class to sort of run through, if you're at a place where you want to start, here's the informed consent document you need to get people to sign. Here's how this works.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to add that to our big thing, but the gist of it is we didn't really expect y'all to start interviewing people yet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? I know we're at 3:30. All right then, guys, thank you for joining us virtually today. I will see you hopefully in person next Friday. And just email me if you have any other questions.
Thanks, Cameron. Have a good weekend.
You too. Have a good weekend,
Thank you,
guys.
Cameron.